Rendez-vous 87. As you are likely aware, Canadian history has recorded some momentous historic battles in this neck of the woods. The battle that takes place this week is of the cultural nature, the hockey culture. Russian hockey against the brand played in the NHL. Already on day one of Rendez-vous 87, there have been some noteworthy events. For example, the Russian practice this morning. It did not happen at the Colisée because of the opening events last night held there. The ice wasn't ready, so they had to go to Laval University, and there was a shoehorn-type crowd there. Today's Russian practice was open to the general public. There was no trouble at all perking up interest in watching the Soviets work out. In fact, a near full house took in the mid-morning workout. The Soviets arrived in Quebec City yesterday afternoon, and like the rest of us, were greeted by a snowstorm. However, there was no evidence of jet lag or rubber legs from their long trek. They were put through a brisk 90-minute session by coach Viktor Tikhonov. Now, to watch a Soviet practice is to understand the Soviet style of play. There is a lot of puck handling. Even during idle moments, players would toss the puck around at will. This team worked in 4 5-man units. The defense paired with the forward unit, and all changed at the same time. The 5-man unit that drew the most attention wore green sweaters. This is the Soviets' best fivesome, no argument there. Igor Larionov centering Sergei Makarov on the left side and Vladimir Krutov on the right side. The blue line is made up of Alexei Kazatonov and Vladislav Fedosov. After watching this green unit for only a couple of rushes, you can easily see they could play just as well blindfolded. The one thing you will notice very quickly at a Soviet workout is that the offensive play is set up in the neutral zone, and the defensemen seem to back in quite a bit. An interesting contrast to this practice session is that on the adjacent ice surface, just as the Soviet practice was ending, Quebec Nordique forward Dale Hunter was skating after recovering from a broken ankle and was going through an exercise to get back in shape. Even though there were plenty of media types on hand at the Soviet practice, there was no full-scale blitz for interviews after. The language barrier, the primary reason why. Later this afternoon, the NHL All-Stars finally appeared on the scene. They attended a jam-packed press conference. The All-Stars will be minus Mark Howe, Mike Bossy, and Paul Coffey for this series.
Typical of the attitude of the players in this league, we find that 23 or 24 or 25 are representing 500, while the other 475 can have a 4-day rest.
Hockey games have a lot of fun while we go out and try our best to entertain and hopefully win for Team NHL.
And the players themselves, because they're the guys who are going to make the show, they're committed to this program, they're going to play with lots of pride, and I want to thank you for your support.
The advertising says Rendezvous 87 is more than just a couple of hockey games. It's a social event, and there's plenty of evidence of that here. Just about everywhere you go in this city, the talk is, of course, about Rendezvous. Like a Super Bowl host city, the home of Rendezvous has everyone involved in the act. Normally at this time of year, Quebec City is a good place to be because of the annual Carnival. One of the things that makes Carnival special is the ice sculpturing. This year, though, the restaurant people here have a friendly competition with ice sculpturing. And if you don't know what's happening here this week, a quick walk down any street with a restaurant will tell you in a hurry. The sculptures are one of the best message boards around. And not to be outdone, a welcome to the American visitors and their bigger dollars that will visit here this week.
Players to put three strong forward lines in uniform for any game. One line seems to rise above the rest, and at this point it's the Makarov, Krutov, Larionov trio. Preceding them, the Soviets featured Vladimir Petrov, Boris Mikhailov, and Valery Kharlamov. This is the attacking unit, the group that holds the puck for an inordinate amount of time. They run the power play. But the Soviets' depth is what has made them many times a world champion. In the early 70s, the team had its top threesome backed by people like Vladimir Shadrin and Alexander Yakushev. This team is no different, but unlike their predecessors, the depth comes from all over the Soviet Union. The big bad Russians of the 70s were really only the Red Army team, with a couple of additions thrown in. This current unit has its share of Army stars, but the team's second line consists of Sergei Svetlov, Sergei Yashin, and Anatoly Semenov, all from the Moscow Dynamo. Several youngsters fill out the rest of the roster. Alexander Semak and Andrei Khomutov are graduates of their 1986 World Junior Champions. On defense, besides Kasatonov and Fedosov, the Soviets are solid with dependable Sergei Starikov and Igor Stelnov. As well, they feature a Canadian-type rearguard, Mikhail Tatarinov, the heir apparent to Fedosov. Veteran Vasily Pervukin is the anchor of the defense on the second unit. He's 31 and aging like fine wine. He can do more defensively than any rearguard in the world today. In goal, more youth. Evgeny Beloshekin is always thought to be the Vladislav Tretiak replacement, and he is finally showing the promise thought to be his a lot earlier. Only 20, he has been a star in the Soviet Elite League for 3 seasons. Tretiak is his mentor, and as the games go by, the resemblance seems more and more noticeable. Overall, a star-studded lineup that features everything. Coach Viktor Tikhonov can look down his bench at any time, pick up the necessary ingredient to do the job. The Soviets counterattack better than anyone in the world today. They have the excellent little players and the outstanding big men. What they feature most, though, is perseverance. They simply will not be outworked. They seem to always have a gear in reserve. To look at their roster presents a most difficult task for Jean Perron and crew. Talent is one thing. The two teams are about equal on that. But teamwork is an area where the Soviets have a huge advantage on the NHL, and that could be the difference. Mike Bossy, Mark Howe, and Paul Coffey is like saying late night would suffer without Paul Schaefer and his orchestra. The skating ability that Coffey has would have been a big asset. Mark Howe's all-round skills are unmatched by North American defensemen, and Bossy's scoring ability is impossible to replace. But simply, the NHL has no choice. They realized that this injury blitz was a possibility. There are players, however, to replace them. Not the ones that match their talents, but solid players just the same. No, they don't have the ability the Soviets do of replacing a player on their roster with one that practices daily with the same unit. But somehow, fellows like Ulf Samuelsson, Kevin Dineen, and Doug Wilson will have to pick up the slack. Mario Lemieux hurt the same knee he injured earlier in the season last night against the Devils, but he will play. You can bet, though, his effectiveness will be hampered. If there is one guy that will pull the team through all its troubles, it just might be Raymond Bourque. While Gretzky and Lemieux will try to puncture the Soviet defense, it will be up to Bourque and company to fend off the Soviets' counterattacks. He was solid in the 1984 Canada Cup and has been nothing short of a sensation since. Raise no doubts about it. It will be what the All-Stars do in their own zone that will decide this 2-game set. That will initiate Bourque's quick puck-handling skills, and how he demonstrates them will be the thing to watch for NHL fans. To go, he scored 3 goals and added...
Making preparations that were much different than the styles that we were used to playing, and I think it's very difficult, as you know, in such a short time to make a lot of adjustments to your game. So I think there'll be a lot of intensity. The atmosphere and everything else will be there. There'll be no problem for our club to be motivated, but you know, I think it's like anything else. The defensive errors, they are opportunists as far as give them the opportunities, and you know, they can cash in. So
the Soviet workout was followed by the arrival of the NHL All-Stars for their first Colisée workout as well. They got the expected business of a team picture out of the way and then hit the ice for a 2-hour workout and get acquainted session. All 3 All-Star coaches put the team through their paces. Badger Bob Johnson and Michel Bergeron were there to help out head coach Jean Perron. One of the big question marks to date has been the knee of Mario Lemieux. So I asked Mario to clarify his situation for us.
Well, I'm feeling pretty good. My knee's about 85% right now. And I don't think there's going to be any problem for me to play Wednesday.
In the games you played when you came back after the injury, did it flare up at all? Did you notice anything about it?
Well, it's tough to come back after you have an injury like this. I missed over a month, and it's always hard to come back after that. But the doctor told me to be patient, and it's going to take about another 3 weeks before I get my strength back in my leg.
Other injuries have hurt the NHL All-Stars. As mentioned last night, Mark Howe and Paul Coffey will not make this trip. Ray Bourque is hurting as well. That puts the spotlight on people like Doug Wilson. When you ask Wilson about it, he'll come up with no excuses for the NHL All-Stars, no matter what.
But I don't think there's any reason for us to make excuses. We just go out there, we've got a lot of pride. It's in a smaller rink, and we'll see how things go.
You may be looking forward to playing in front of Ron Hextall and him firing the puck up the boards against these fellas.
It'll be interesting. I'm used to playing with a goalie, Murray Bannerman, that handles the puck like that, but Ron is probably the best in the business right now.
For others, the concern is not about injuries at all. It's a first-time experience. Philadelphia Flyer Tim Kerr is one of several All-Stars taking on the Russians for the first time. While Kerr has that happy-just-to-be-here attitude, it will be a big test for the big winger with the not-so-fast blades.
No, I'm not one of the fastest players around, that's for sure, and it'll be interesting to see what happens.
How difficult is it to come into a situation? We've talked about the players, but now all of a sudden you have to take direction from coaches that you're really not accustomed to.
No, it's difficult, not knowing any of the 3 coaches that are here. it'll be interesting to see, you know, what happens. But they've been very good, and they've been very, you know, they explain things really well, and it's important.
Now, the one thing that may appear to favor the All-Stars that have been here before is the fact that the Soviet squad has many familiar names and faces on it. But when you put that thought to Wayne Gretzky, he'll quickly shoot it down.
Well, basically, most of them, I think everybody they have I've seen play somewhere or played against them. So we're, you know, you play against them, everybody plays the same, so it doesn't matter if you play against their top line or their third or fourth line. They all play the same. They're all good, and they all play disciplined hockey. It's tough to play every line.
As far as the team, 5 consecutive Stanley Cups, the reason why. They called it fire wagon hockey. Speed and puck control were the keys. The leader of the pack was a man they called the Rocket, Maurice Richard. If there was ever a player that could lift the fans out of their seats, it was the Rocket. His flair for the dramatics made him one of hockey's greatest clutch players. Most of his career 82 playoff goals were of the crucial nature. That type of leadership and game-breaking ability is something that the NHL All-Stars could make use of in this series. Well, the Rocket is in Quebec City for this week's Rendezvous 87, and as he watched the two teams, he is impressed. He is especially wary of what the Soviets have to offer.
Today, it seems that the team that they had 4 or 5 years ago was a little bit stronger and bigger. But after I saw a little bit of that practice, I think they're a good skater, and they can shoot the puck very well and pass the puck, especially passing the puck. That's their main thing in their game. They don't get rid of the puck like the Canadians do. So I think it's going to be a good series. But the best thing about the Russian player there, and maybe in better condition than our Canadian boys.
Like many of those in the know, Richard has his own thoughts about how to stop that big red machine.
I would tell our boys to pass the puck like they do, control the puck like they do. They don't get rid of the puck for nothing. They just try to go in. As soon as they got an opportunity or an opening, they go for the net. But they don't. They keep possession of the puck so long that we don't have much chance to score.
Several current NHLers have in the past offered various excuses for international hockey failures. But on the other hand, several of the NHL's all-time best that never had a chance to participate wish they could have. In 1972, both Jean Beliveau and Gordie Howe retired, missing by only months the chance to join the Canadian team for the fabled 72 Summit Series. It was something they regretted. Richard, though, is one old-timer that doesn't regret missing the chance of playing against the Soviets.
No, I didn't regret it too much. I don't think I would have loved to play them because I remember I met Tarasov in Ottawa a couple of times when he came to Canada to play amateur team, and he always told me that the National Hockey League there, they were the one that didn't want to play us. So I think they would have played good hockey against us.